Thank you all again for joining us. This is our Trio Budget Management Made Simple, from budget categories to year-round control. So glad you could join us. NEC, again, I was just telling a lot of y'all when you were in the waiting room here about our mission. Here at NEC, we're wanting to promote effectiveness and the impact of TRIO programs and other educational opportunity programs through specialized technical assistance and support services. We offer most of our services are allowable cost. And I'm going to mention what categories they usually come out of. Most of our services come from the other category in your budget, just keep it in mind. And a lot of our expenses we're usually not planned for ahead of time, so to speak, in your budget approvals or requests. We usually come around because of carryover, which we will talk about. And a large part of this webinar is to go ahead and support trying to maintain a handle on carryover so that you can start spending funds during the year and not all at once at the end of the year. Okay. That's going to help you out tremendously. So you don't have to put everything aside in the summer to just focus on spending, where you should be wrapping things up with students and finishing up recruiting students so you can get your PE points and all that good stuff, but also take stress off of, knowing that during the year you can purchase certain things as you go along. And some of those things, hey, vested interest can be NEC services as you see listed here. The items at the very bottom, the last three bullets, those are items that are not allowable costs. They would have to come out of indirect funding from your institution or your agency. You can't use grant funds for that. But there is another great new service that we just launched called Budget Management Technical Assistance. And this service here is something that I've been thinking about for years to do, but I knew that I could not do it on my own because of my limited experience in that area. If you had told me years ago, and by the way, there's that QR code to actually take you to our site on our website where it talks to you about these services in more detail, our budget management services. But, again, my name's Lisa Retamoso. I've been in TRIO for 34 years. If you had told me 32 years, you will be in TRIO is number one. And number two, hosting or having a company that helps TRIO programs, and one of your services is going to be about budget management, I would have said, that's crazy talk. Because when I first became a director, I was so busy trying to get my numbers up with Talent Search, a brand new Talent Search program. I barely had time to know the regulations, and I had someone else handling the budget for me, which I thought, and at the time, was a good thing. It was a really good thing back 32 years ago at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Fort Worth. But as I soon became used to being a director, I noticed very quickly that it was very, it was limited, my planning, because I didn't know what was in the budget. So little by little, I got to know the budget, but I was never fully comfortable with it until, honestly, when I left being a full-time director after about 11 years of being a director of multiple Upward Bound and Talent Search programs there at the Boys and Girls Club. Went on to be an executive director of multiple programs at a couple of other universities until I moved out here to North Dallas, where there weren't any TRIO programs. And that's when, just by chance, through the connections that I'd made, friends through TRIO, and carryover. They had carryover. I had the time. I had the experience. They had the funding in the right category. By accident, here I am, almost 20 years later from starting to do that. And it wasn't until I left being a full-time director and I started helping other folks where I had the time to dig into the regulations, is where I finally got to become comfortable somewhat with the budget categories. But it's still been a learning process, and I'm still learning as well. So hopefully after this webinar, I want to let you know that, it's not, the time is probably a lack of time to dive into it is probably why maybe some of y'all may be, struggling or feeling a little bit challenged, or when you're doing your annual budget. And then when you get trying to, focus on managing the budget during the year, and then have a lot of carryover where you're, surprised with all this carryover. I know it. I've been there, experienced it. And I've been trying through NEC to help folks in a limited way, because I didn't have the other part of the experience, which was the technical piece of managing the budget Melissa, I am a double major in finance and international business from UT, and I did get an A in accounting way back when, but that was it. And I've just been detached from it. And that's why lucky enough to, throughout my years in Trio, have consultants like Lourdes and Mary Meeks, Dr. Teresa in the direct programming pieces. And of course, we have on with us Donna and Leah, who've helped out tremendously with their marketing expertise. There's no way we could have reached this many people and be presenting in this manner, without having their expertise. Well, again, I've been fortunate enough to bring in people from outside of Trio, like Donna and Leah, to help me with the marketing. And now I'm fortunate to bring on board Melissa Trevino. And the way Melissa I met, who is our budget management consultant, I'll tell you quick, how we met through, I was refinancing my house, and because of my business and because I'm a business major, embarrassing, but my business books, I'll be for real, were a hot mess. I was doing something on a very simple, I called it a Mickey Mouse spreadsheet, which I still use, right? Because I can't. And Melissa never was judgy. Okay. That's what I loved about her. She was like, she could have really, made fun of me, but she did not. She realized where I was coming from and I was struggling with it. Long story short, y'all, she is really another big reason as to why I'm here before you, not burdened down by bookkeeping and all those things, and being, making sure I filed everything correctly, is because of her assistance and her actually taking the time to show me how I can look at my balances and accounts receivable in a way that I've never looked at them before, with reports and things like that. And I can't tell you how much better I feel, so much better knowing that that's taken care of and that she's teaching me how to do that. So anyway, long story short, trying to, while we're doing this and getting me back on track, I kept thinking, this is something that Trio folks need to have, something where some sort of tool to track their budget during the year, so they can always see every month what they've spent out and what they haven't spent yet. And so I asked Melissa, I said, so do we need to get QuickBooks for nonprofit? And then she was like, I don't know, let me find out more about Trio. So she did. She and her company found out about Trio, and here we are, developing a service and already have clients on board. And in fact, Melissa, some of our clients might be on board already here. Yes. So those of you that have been on board and been meeting with Melissa, you kind of know what we're talking about here, but hopefully you'll get another insight into where we can take you with the service that we have. And for everybody else who's not currently a client or taking part in our budget management support services, we hope that after this webinar, you leave with some information where you can implement it yourself, because, it's a spreadsheet. And we're going to present in a manner where it could be a takeaway that you've got the time or folks on your staff to build it. Or you may want to consider, with carryover that you may discover that you have, through this webinar, to partner with NEC and Melissa to do this for you. So I'm going to turn over to Melissa briefly so she can introduce herself, let you know where she's coming from, since I told you where I've been coming from, mainly. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. So as Lisa said, I am an accountant. I am from my school, UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. Earned a degree in accounting way too long ago. But I have spent many years in the industry of finance, accounting. So learning all about this, meeting Lisa, it's been such a treasure. I have learned, I come from a family of teachers who have always wanted me to kind of go in that direction of education. And so I kind of took the other way and decided to play with numbers all day. I do not math. That's why I'm going to present you a spreadsheet that maths for us. So Lisa has, like I said, when she asked me about this and asked about QuickBooks, and I realized, well, most of the programs do not have access to the actual cash transactions. So every time you're spending, you're literally just getting data. that you have to somehow keep track of. So when we discussed this further, this was something where I said, well, I could just build a spreadsheet and in hopes that we can customize it per program to whoever uses it because whoever uses it needs to be familiar, needs to be comfortable working in it and understand it. So this was something where we wanted to work our way through it. And with the few clients that we have already on board, I have learned so much more and I've enjoyed every interaction with everyone. And every single time I'm just like, I can do something else. And then I realize that I'm probably making it more difficult. So Lisa always brings me back to earth on this one. So this is why we're doing this together today. That way can speak my language and in as well as your language and in hopes that it all makes sense. But again, that's what we're here for. This service will allow us to build it for you and then maintain the support for you throughout, the life of your service that you choose to have it for. So this is definitely worth a while, but I'm hoping with this program or with this webinar today that, maybe there's even more to this that, I may be missing, we may be missing, need to bring to the table, or too much is already here. So I think this will be also very helpful on our end to make sure that our service is exactly, you know, tailored to what everyone needs. So
Right, because we've got so many different levels of users, and that's one of the things we talked about prior to this. What if we have someone like me who's a basic user, literally with that Mickey Mouse spreadsheet to handle my business for on my own for the last, and I was barely limping by, versus someone who likes to do transactions and is actually right there and then. So hopefully you'll be able to see how you can take this the spreadsheet that we're going to show you and get an idea on, what, I can do that. Or maybe I need some help with it. It's okay. I mean, I needed help. We all needed help when we, especially when it comes to this, and especially nowadays, right? We do have a poll, Melissa. I don't know if you can see it. We're going to share the results of where folks are coming from. And Donna, if you could give a quick assessment, I believe just like we thought, SSS, we gambled on that, right, Melissa?
yeah.
And that we would have most of the SSS folks here on board. So thanks for answering that poll. We appreciate that. And again, now that I'm back on track, I'm not leaving the screen. All right. So just wanted to touch base on our session overview and learning goals. I wanted to, this webinar is going to focus mainly on post-award fiscal management practices. After you get your budget approved during the year, okay? Tracking, to me, Melissa, it was always that carryover. I needed to
Yes.
know so I could
Yeah.
implement activities, purchase things during the year, because I didn't want to get accused of stockpiling, which is what I had to talk a lot of my clients out this summer because they had so much money in June and July and August and we're trying to spend money. And I said, we got to be careful with that, y'all, because those services, those items that you're buying need to be utilized during this project year. And it's going to be hard to justify that when you're buying it the last week or the last day of the program. So, we're going to take you through that. But before that, you want to also have let's touch base on some of the trio budget categories and also understand how they connect to the OMB uniform guidance and program regulations. All right. So you've got to be able to know a lot about your program regulations and then some of the OMB uniform guidance. And Melissa, I really love on the spreadsheet that you've developed for our clients that there's a tab that has a link to all the OMB uniform guidance. And also in the Google Drive that you guys have access to right now, you can go in there. We put a document in there that says OMB Uniform Guidance Reference Sheet, which I love because I go to that at least 3 or 4 times a day with client questions or when I'm trying to work with clients. So it's good to have it handy. We're also going to talk about allowable, unallowable, and prior approval cost across common budget lines. This is something that's coming up a lot. I know we're under a unique situation, where things are going on that are out of our control. But when we're back up and running, you want to make sure let's use this time to kind of look at our budget and make sure we understand what's allowable, unallowable, and also talk about that prior approval. I'm getting that question the most right now, Melissa, is when, do I need to get approval to do this? Do I need to get approval? Now, I will say, if anybody out there has received in their GAN, their grant award notification in box 10, if you have been listed or have restrictions, there may be, when I cover that regulation, it'll say something like, I'm paraphrasing, or other restrictions placed by the funding agency. Some of y'all may be on that where you have to get all your expenses approved, Melissa. They did flag some projects that cannot get reimbursed until they get approval from someone in the department. There's nobody in the department right now. So that's an issue. And I know that COE put something out to contact them if you find yourself in that situation where you cannot get reimbursed or must have your reimbursement approved. But normally, usually, there are just a handful of times where you need to get prior approval from DC. Believe it or not, I thought when we were federally funded, it was going to be worse than state, but actually state funding is more restrictive to my experience. And again, I want to share some resources briefly. You can check it out right now in the Google Drive of resources to help you with the post-award fiscal management practices. And then Melissa is going to take you through the NEC budget tracker demo, so you can see how you can monitor monthly, and also a brief little discussion about how, if you want to take it to the next level, if you all want to do that on your own, where you can make it a more comprehensive tool. But I'm the basic girl. I just would like to know what I have going on every month, so especially in the supplies, tracking that. And also, I'm keeping an eye on personnel and fringe benefit rate expenses, because that's usually where we end up having a lot of carryover in. I'm also going to cover, or we're going to stress, applying some effective strategies during that presentation on how you can be on the lookout to make sure that you're online with, having enough money in the right categories. And when you see too much, where you could document when you're doing the transfer of $1, funds from one category to the other. And also how you can use it when you meet with your budget person at your institution, because again, they've got a different budget setup, right? You can't use their budget setup when you talk to the department. You've got to use the department budget format. So you're basically going to have to learn, or be fluent in two types of budget languages, right? The Department of Ed, and then how your institution categorizes things. All right. Can't help you today with how your institution categorizes things. I mean, long term, if we were working closely together, sure, we would do all that. But what I'm going to do right now is just very quickly remind you all of some, OMB uniform guidance regulations, in addition to your individual program regulations that mention or list what's an allowable and unallowable cost. I mean, we first go to that. If I'm upward bound, or if I'm talent search, I would go to my program regulations. And by the way, in the Google Drive, there is a document there that lists all the TRIO regulations. You click that link, go to allowable costs or unallowable costs. You have easy access for that. I know you probably know them or know where they're at. Just trying to put everything in one place so that you don't have to have everything go to 3 or 4 different folders. So those, when I was a new director, I was told to look only at that. So I was talent search for a minute before I got upward bound in some of the other programs. So talent search is always close and dear to my heart. So I learned those expenses that could be allowable and unallowable just for talent search. And I thought I knew everything, Melissa. I thought that's what it was. And then I was like, you know how they say I was this many years old when I realized there was a whole nother thousands and thousands of regulations, it seemed, under the Office of Management and Budget uniform guidance that were about all the federal programs. I was thinking I was big time because I could rattle off my talent search allowable and unallowable costs, which is, just about this much stuff. And then I realized, oh, you mean I need to know this uniform guidance stuff? And I was told, yeah. The good news is you don't have to memorize all of it. And the good news is that we put together a reference sheet of the most common OMB uniform guidance regulations that you should be aware of, in addition to your own, your McNair program, your SSS program regulations. If in the PDF of this deck slide, when you click here, it'll take you to the actual website that has all the OMB uniform guidelines. If you ever need to see the source, or go right there. But again, the documents we provided in the Google Drive also break it down, and Melissa's going to show you in more detail when she gets into her demonstration that one of the tabs there has, the links there to the most common ones. But, we also refer to it, the uniform guidance, as the 2 CFR Part 200. So you see that frequently, but it is ultimately how all the federal grants are governed, in addition to having our program regulations. It's a standard framework. It sets the tone. I mean, it's for nonprofit, state, and local agencies. So we've also included in the Google Drive a lot of other resources on where you can get additional training, because you could spend a whole, weeks and weeks on that. And Donna, you have a question, or we do have a poll, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you wanted me to launch that poll.
Yes, go ahead and do that. I must have missed it on the previous slide. Thought I saw that. So we're going to launch a poll, but yes, thank you so much. How familiar are you with OMB 2 CFR 200 cost principles? Hey, very familiar, somewhat familiar, not familiar. It's okay. Again, Melissa, I didn't know they existed until after I became I'd heard about them, and I think I'd been using some of them, but it was all a blur. I was like, how come some things are in my talent search regulations and they're talking about something that it's not there. It's not there because, and they'll tell you in your upward bound and your SSS regulations, they'll use language like the following includes, but is not limited to. And I never thought of it that way. I never read it, I guess. I was just like, it says, but it's not listed here, or it is listed here, but it says, hey, someone told me, hey, that's just some of the things. It's not the absolute. You got to go in OMB to get the other stuff, because that's where they cover administrative requirements, the standards for financial management, procurement, property standards, and record keeping, cost principles. That's what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, today in this webinar. Cost principles, defining which costs are allowable, allocable, reasonable for reimbursement, and then audit requirements. We usually cover those in a compliance assessment webinar. So we're not going to talk about those as much, but we're going to really focus on the cost principles. And so our poll, Donna, do you want to kind of somewhat familiar, right? I know the basics. And someone said they think it's new, but hey, I'm always learning about them as well. So, let's rehash some of them together. And I think we have another poll coming up for this one, right? Okay. So before we go into the OMB, well, this covers OMB as well, the budget categories for TRIO programs. When you submit your proposal, we usually fill out a federal form. I think it's 524 or 424, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. If you've ever had the pleasure of submitting the proposal online, you've got a budget form. And then every year, or when you get refunded or funded for the first time, you have to turn in a budget, and then a budget. And that usually includes carryover. We're going to talk about briefly the major categories. Now, category number 1, personnel, which includes full-time and part-time project staff. It also includes salary and hourly paid positions. Then you've got fringe benefit rates, which are kind of both the salaries that your institution or agency has to pay positions. You don't get to decide that as directors or staff. That's pretty much set in stone. And also the fringe benefit rates are set in stone. And these are just some of the common ones that are set. Now, these are 2 costs that, even though we're on flat funding, level funding, and we don't know for how long, these are 2 costs that will go up. Most agencies or universities go ahead and have a mandatory cost of adjusted cost of living increase. And even if they don't, let's say they say, no one's getting a raise. Well, there's definitely, we can't control the market with health insurance rates, things like that. And that's usually, just based on what I have to pay, Melissa, I saw a 12% increase. I think I was lucky. Usually it was a little higher than that, but I can't control that. I have nothing to do with that. And so we have some clients that range from a 34% fringe benefit rate to 72% fringe benefit rate. So it's just not the 60,000 or 70,000 you have to pay someone, but it's whatever the percentage is. 72% fringe, right, Melissa? We're talking some money coming out of the budget. So that's why most of our funding annually is in just two categories, personnel and fringe. That's the bad news, I guess, that the majority, sometimes people say, Lisa, I did my budget and I'm coming up with like 80% of my budget is in salaries. I have hardly anything for the other categories. And I said, yes, that's what I go, well, don't worry. That's how it is for everybody. Initially, when you have everybody on board at 100% or, a full staff, if you were to maintain that full staff, yes, you would be hurting. But guess what's happening? We have vacancies for whatever reason, especially nowadays, we have a lot of vacancies. So because most of your budget goes into these two categories, when you have a vacancy, you start stockpiling, you start having carryover from the minute someone is no longer employed, especially if they're the director, and especially if they're 100%. Sometimes some of our directors, Melissa, are 50%. So you don't see as much as an impact. But if it was a director's position and that position is not being paid out, that is where our carryover starts to grow from day one. And I tell folks, the minute someone told me they were leaving, I either was sad they were leaving or honestly glad they were leaving. But I automatically thought, okay, now I can do that trip, because it's going to take me a while to get someone in place. You know how long it takes to go through the hiring process at colleges and universities. So that's going to take a minute. So I'm already thinking, okay, those things we wanted to do, now we can do them. Oh, okay. I'm still talking to the person, but I had to think that way. And I was guesstimating the whole time, how much I would be saving and how much I can start. But it was a struggle to get permission, not federally, but from my boss to say, well, I want to do this. And they were thinking, well, you don't have the money. And I was like, but I do, because that position is not open. And the idea of taking from personnel was, they didn't like that. And I get it, right, Melissa? They would worry about taking away from, and I would get blue in the face trying to explain to them, but that's days and hours that have already passed that we didn't spend it.
And that's kind of, going based off of this is kind of the purpose of this budget program or service that we're offering, is to assist with that, that if there's somebody that we need to fill the role, right, September 1st rolled around, all programs reset, and we didn't have roles set, or directors in place, or just roles were empty still. This is our hope, is that this will be able to allow you to 3 months ahead actually start planning that. That way, because of the length of time that it does take to go through the hiring process, and then when you finally get started, then we have the new budget already set in place. So then, that was kind of part of our original discussion when we started talking about this, is where we predominantly focused on personnel and fringe, because of one, the increase on the annual basis, or, program-based growth, things like that, where we wanted to make sure that that was always incorporated. And then should somebody, leave in the middle, or your temp employees don't work all the way through, things like that, where you can actually predict now versus guesstimating. You can actually have a more solid idea of what you will have at year end, or to be able to start next year.
And we also have right now, I know there are projects out there that don't have a director right now. Right now, or they're new, or they've got positions that have been vacant for a while. I'm spending time on this, y'all, because this is where the money starts stockpiling, and people can get into a situation, Melissa, where they have so much the first year that rolls into the second year. And you and I have spoken, we're never going to tell people's business, but I've seen it myself, where people could have 6 figures of carryover. And that's very hard to explain. And that's why they're getting flagged. So I don't want you to get flagged. I don't want to get flagged. So I want to try to spend this on stuff during the year in bits and pieces, because this is where, if anyone out there has a lot of carryover, the forensics of it is that it came from here. and people are like, well, why do you have so much? Are you not doing the work? I'm doing the work, but we just don't have people in place, and this is
One
how they're
person doing
monitoring
3
us.
jobs.
They're supervising us by looking at how much money we haven't spent. And it's
Mhm.
usually in personnel and fringe. So that's what happens. So we do have a poll, Donna, if you want to kind of summarize that for us. I guess it's across the board pretty even, right?
Yeah, it looks like participant support costs
Mhm.
causing the most confusion,
Yep.
closely
Uh,
followed by supplies and personnel. So
Okay. And we actually pulled out participant support costs to talk about in detail, to have it ready for you to see. Now, moving on to staff travel. Now, also staff travel, something I say recent, but it was in effect in 2014, Melissa, but 2014 and TRIO is just the other day. Okay. Because
Yeah.
we've been around since 1965. So people say, what, in 2014? It's 2025, almost 2026. Why am I just hearing about this? Staff travel includes mileage, transportation, lodging, and per diem, but it does not include staff registration or training fees. Those are supposed to go under the other category. And that for SSS is going to help them a lot, Melissa, because they are the only ones that have a restriction in their TRIO SSS regulations that they can't go over 4% of just personnel, not personnel and fringe, just personnel. So think of the personnel line item, multiply it times 4%. And that's what they're restricted on an annual basis unless they get prior approval. And that takes more than a minute. So if you are adding the registration fees to staff travel, you see how all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I've gone over my 4%. Well, the training registration conference fees goes under other, because sometimes nowadays we do a lot of virtual training. Our virtual training through NEC should not be charged to staff travel. It should be charged to other, because it's just a registration or training fee. So make sure you keep an eye on that. And for SSS, it's a big deal. Maybe not so much for the other TRIO programs, because it could make or break you having to get prior approval. Your TRIO staff guidelines, they're not regulations, they're staff travel guidelines. They're located in the budget instructions in each program's application for the grant or the RFP. They're pretty much the same. I'm going to put them in the Google Drive as well. They talk about the project director being the only one allowed to go, not allowed, but guidelines, preferred to go to the national conference. And the way they have it set up, it looks like only the project advisors can only go to the state conference. But if the money is there and you have, money to spend on training, you can do that. It's just initially in the proposal, we try to follow the guidelines. And that's why they're called guidelines. They're not regulations, but you can get a program specialist that treats them as such. So they could, they're the boss. If in DC you get a program officer that treats those travel guidelines as though they're regulations, what are you going to do, right? You have to go with that the flow there. And then staff travel is included in the modified total direct cost, MTDC, that me and Melissa have been going around back and forth. Can you imagine modified total direct cost? That's a challenge in itself. I bring it up because student travel is not included in modified total direct cost because it's considered a participant support cost, which just feeds into the confusion, right? Because up until 2014, student and staff travel, there was no such thing as modified total direct cost. And so since 1965, we've been going on these budget categories without these two new kids showing up, participant support cost, so to speak, that definition. And then this modified total direct cost rate, what the heck is that? Well, if I didn't have any student travel at all, I would never mess with it. Maybe if I had grant aid, that's considered a participant support cost. So it does mess with it. But if I didn't have grant aid and I didn't have any student travel, stipends, that counts as participant support costs. So some of y'all can go for a minute without having to encounter modified total direct cost. But sooner or later, it's going to come up. Now, student travel includes transportation, lodging, and subsistence is what they call it. In parentheses, that's meals, okay? A little something that popped up here at the national conference is, they're cracking down the TRIO office on the breakdown of the number of trips, number of travelers, cost for participants, stating the educational purpose of all travel. Everything has to have an educational purpose. It's always been that way, y'all, but now they're really coming down on that. And also something new is include how participants were selected to travel. Okay. And also with SSS, it's unique that they have to require prior approval, which they can get in their budget. But if a trip pops up, then they're going to have to get prior approval from their program officer. Just some of the O&B cost principles that come up all the time. Entertainment costs here. There's no fun in trio. I mean, there is, but officially there's no fun in trio, and we don't spend a single penny on anything that's amusement, diversion, or social activity. This has been there forever and a day. This is not new. What's new is the focus on it and tying it into the trips that we do with the students. We've all
So
in
is
the
this
past,
something like if they were on a trip, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, go ahead,
is
go
this
ahead.
something like if they were on a trip, then, you know, like a show of some sort, or is that
Yes.
entertainment? Okay. So that's
Broadway
not
show,
included.
right? If I said you and me, Melissa, hey, let's remember we wanted to go to New York,
Yes.
see some shows, right?
Yes.
Entertainment. I want to take students. I'm going to have to make it an educational purpose. I'm going to have to add on a learning objective, and even then with pre and post testing, link it to my objectives. It still could be, depending on the person viewing it, right? The prudent, program officer could say, no, that's entertainment. The painting with a twist or whatever, with not the non-alcoholic type one, or the etiquette dinners, those are stuff that trio people have done. And the amusement parks, taking kids to Six Flags,
Mhm.
Disney.
What if it was an educational type
Right, like,
show or
oh,
something?
I've taken kids to Disney with Talent Search, Disney behind the scenes, where they show
Okay.
careers and things like that. But even those nowadays in today's climate could be shot down.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying we need to be very, very careful about this. So I put it here because, and in Chicago, they brought that up, the program officers that were there. And it sounded like, when you get the sense that it's not really them, it's someone else telling them to, it's not
Yeah.
a new rule. It's just, I think they've been not focused on it. And now they were told to focus on this and to make sure in student travel that everything, listed has an educational purpose. And you're going to get some pushback. You're going to get people told to ask the questions. How are you picking students? How is this educational or an academic programming? Or just shut out, said, no, it's entertainment. So just wanted to put it out there. So yeah, we have to keep an eye on that. It's been around for a minute, but not really focused on. Participant support costs. This means direct costs for items such as stipends. Who has a stipend out there, right? Or subsistence allowances. That's your meals, travel allowances, and registration fees paid to or on behalf of participants or trainees. Well, participants, but not employees. Okay, that's under, another category, in connection with conferences or training projects. And we are considered a training project, all the TRIO programs, they label us as training projects. That's why they use the terminology in the budget, training stipends. It sounds weird, right? To me, initially as training stipend, I'm not getting a stipend to go to training. No, it's because they consider all the TRIO programs are considered through the Department of Ed a training grant.
Okay.
Serving direct students. And that's the terminology they use. So the stipends are like, or the, things that go, they're like gifts, basically. It's something
Yes.
that cannot be used by the project
Again.
over and over again.
Yeah.
What's
So
the
now
accounting
just to
terminology?
clarify on this one, the travel allowances here is student.
Everything student, participant support costs.
Okay.
That's why student travel is not part of the calculation for the modified total direct cost. Okay. Grant aid is not part of it. I had a struggle with the McNair folks, not the Trio McNair folks, but the business offices that handle McNair, because forever and a day, they were taking 8% of, of the travel from McNair, and McNair students do a lot of travel. So they were having to, here I am, the bad guy saying, oh no, you can't take 8% of that because you have to deduct all that McNair student travel to conferences and trainings, and they would do quite a bit. A large part of their budget, they have, I think, the biggest student travel line item. And before, the institution could take 8% of the total direct cost. But then this came out in 2014 where they couldn't. So they're, in a way, the institution was getting less of the 8% of the total budget. They weren't. They were getting 8% of everything except for student travel. So that meant less money coming to them. So that was to the institution. More was staying with the grant. So
What about those who actually travel with them? That would they be?
they would
Like
come
if
out
you-
of the other costs. They would come out of staff travel and the other cost, and staff travel and other.
Mhm. Okay.
It's just
So even though they're the same,
function, the same
they're the
event.
same, yeah, the same event, there you have portion categorized here and then a portion under participant support costs.
Correct, correct,
Okay.
correct. And it used to be different. They used to say, oh, if you're traveling with the students, you take it out of participant support costs. But it says not for employees.
Employees. Well, okay, yes.
So
I guess I
that's-
didn't read that in parentheses.
Yeah, well, see, there you go. And it takes a
Yeah.
while. It takes a while, but we put this here because it's very, very common, y'all, where people are like, where does it say that? And this is where sometimes on an annual basis, I go ahead and request certain things that I, like snacks during workshops or meals during workshops during lunchtime. On an annual basis, Melissa, I would request that under participant support costs rather than leave it unmentioned in supplies, because I could get it. There could be an issue if a receipt comes out and they say, oh, for meals, was this during a trip? No, it was here on campus. I mean, I have a good reason. We didn't, it's a good thing, right? Meals at a workshop. The problem is not, having meals at a workshop on campus. The issue is who's paying for it and where did it come from out of your budget? If it had been approved on an annual basis under participant support costs as a separate line item, which you've noticed in some of the sample budgets where it says,
Yeah.
that's being
Mhm.
offered. Then if it gets approved, then I'm okay to do it. Rather than what I know I used to do in the past is just to take it out of supplies and hope that no one traced it. Where did this come from? Oh, no, that's not a supply. That's a participant support cost. So you can still have your cake and eat it too if you classify it in the right area and get the permission to spend it there. Okay. Again, you want to make sure that it's reasonable, allocable, and is not, usually I request to use carryover funds for that, because if I get turned down, then it's not the end of the world for that. Okay. So that's participant support costs. So I wanted to, talk about those things in those areas. And then we have other items, Melissa, that we talked about, that equipment may be something that, now they increase the threshold. I think it's any one unit that is more than $10,000. It used to be 5,000, but some institutions and agencies still use the 5,000. So we have to adhere to that definition. Usually it's NA, not applicable for us, right? But it may happen. You may get approval if you've got a lot of carryover, if you have to buy something, so you don't want to get rid of that line item, just have it there. And if it's NA, if it's got a 0, that's fine. Supplies is where we live a lot in, office supplies, computers for staff, technology for staff, also instructional supplies, curriculum and workshop materials that you can reuse, with students, the workshops that you reuse. Contractual and construction typically stay, not applicable, except I told you my experience with the Boys and Girls Club as an agency. When I had my Upward Bound, I was allowed to hire people under contractual. Every year I'd put money under contractual and it got approved rather than under personnel. And we did that to save money because we didn't have to pay, fringe benefits, or, also we could terminate and hire very fast. Then we have another category, which includes institutional membership fees, staff conference registration fees, in-service training. My favorite thing, that's what we put that OMB, that training cost, the cost of training and education provided for employee development, is allowable. So this is, like I said, this is our bread and butter, Melissa, where NEC services should be paid out of. There's also where rental fees, any office space or technology, computers or copiers or storage that you rent, not copiers or computers that you purchase to keep. But if you're renting them, which some folks are doing, any rental fees, and some people are paying storage fees, rental fees, those are not included in modified total direct costs. So the two big things that not most, but most people have participant travel. So we know that that's got to be deducted from the total direct cost, which makes it the modified total direct cost. That's multiplied times the 8%. Some people also have rental. It doesn't happen that often, but that would be rental and participant support. participant travel, then some people have stipends, you know, and so, you know, it depends on the program, so to speak. So it depends on what program you're coming from. I was a poor upward bound program, so we didn't have any stipends, so I didn't have to worry about that, but I did have student travel. And so I'd still have to worry about that. When I was running the programs, I didn't have to deal with modified direct costs. It was a little bit easier. Now it's not so much. So your total direct costs are every, you know, all these categories 1 through 8, but then you have to go ahead and do the modified direct costs. And here's the definition. It means all direct salaries and wages, applicable fringe benefits, materials and supplies, services, travel, and subawards and subcontracts. Some language there, but it excludes equipment, capital expenditures, charges for patient care, which doesn't adhere to us, rental costs, tuition remission, scholarships, fellowships, participant support costs. So that's where it says it includes everything, but except these things. So total cost minus participant travel and rental costs are usually what is common in TRIO. I should have also put any stipends like grant aid or upward bound stipends are also deducted from here. Okay, so I'll make that change and upload that in the Google Drive. So that's the big deal here, is that total modified direct cost is, you know, has to include certain things. And the thing with that is I try to make my budget simple if I can, if I'm allowed to. Melissa, I've showed you 2 different variations, and those of you out there probably have seen the 2 different templates. Where I could have it, I could put staff travel and participant travel above the, you know, the indirect cost, above lines, you know, 11 and 12 or 10, 11 and 12. And then I have to do the math to deduct them. Or I've showed you examples where I purposely only talk about staff travel and then wait until under category 12 where I bring up the staff travel. I've seen it done both ways. I prefer to have it listed under training stipends if I'm allowed to do that, depending on who's approving my budget, old school or new school. It depends. I have to go with the flow. If I can, I put it under training stipends because my rationale was it's less math. It's less math and I only have to worry about rental, but rarely do we have programs that rent. So I can keep everything together and keep it simple is my rationale. And I was trying to explain that to you like last night, right?
Yeah. I think I grasped it after a while.
Right.
It clicked after a minute.
And I still have to self-talk and memorize that, you know, total costs or direct costs plus indirect costs plus the training stipends. Those 3 things. Donna, do we have another poll?
No, I was just going to let you know that there are quite a few questions about specific things about where items go in the budget. And I just thought we could address, let everybody know that we're going to answer a lot of them at the end of the webinar.
Oh yeah, I forgot to state that. I made a big deal about it during our pre-meeting that I was going to let you know that we have so many people on there. Please ask your questions in the Q&A. And if we have time at the very end, we'll start going back and answering them. If not, we're going to take all your Q&As and I will develop answers to them and post it in the Google Drive. Okay. Thanks, Donna, for reminding me of that. All right, so let me move on. Those are the categories. Again, Melissa has a tab on her demo to show you where these items go. What we did here, and if you click this link here, it'll take you to the OMB, and we also have a sheet in the Google Drive for quick reference. But these are the most common. I think there might be 14 of them. OMB regulations listed. And that way, almost every day, someone asks me about 1 or 2 of these things, Melissa. So they're here. Keep it handy. You're going to come across it. And it's there for you to utilize as needed. And also you'll see in the budget that demo, it's part of that in a way for one of the tabs. Just a couple of things about revision of budget and program plans. Unless you have been flagged, unfortunately, as needing to get approval for anything you purchase or to get your reimbursement, up until then, you only needed to ask permission if you were changing the scope of your program or changing your objective, which happens very rarely when directors are changed. And that's probably the #1 thing. I just did 3 of them this last week where people are asking me, who do I need to, and how do I ask permission for a new director, or we want to hire somebody, or #3, we're going from 100% to 50% director. That's whenever their time and effort on the grant is to be reduced more than 25%, that's where you need to get prior approval. Okay. We also have transfer of funds for participant support costs. So once we put money in participant support costs, Melissa, in the budget and gets approved, we're not supposed to take that money out to put anywhere else unless we get prior approval. Personal and fringe from the feds, personal and fringe in those categories, we can move from there and put anywhere, you know, we would like. I mean, of course, we need to get our agency or institution to approve it if there's levels that they require. You know, can't just go loose with it internally, maybe in the budget, but federally speaking, you don't have to get prior approval unless you end up having money in that participant support cost. If you put too much, or you got money carryover, that's where you can't just take it out and put it someplace else. It's like a restricted account. Once you put the money in there, you have to ask special permission to take it out and put it anywhere else. Okay, so that's a big deal. All right. Other than that, you know, and there's a subawarding and subcontracting. If somebody wanted to hire NEC to run their whole program, the university says, "Oh, I'm just going to hire NEC to do it." We'd love to do it, but we probably would have to get prior approval to do it, and they might not go with that. They would say, "Well, why don't we just give the money to them?" Well, you know. And then if there's any cost sharing or matching, which is only applicable to SSS and possibly McNair, some of their SSS, just SSS. If you want more money, you can ask, but you're not going to get it. But here, no other prior approval for specific items may be imposed unless a deviation has been approved by OMB, except for folks now. And you'll see the letters in the Google Drive. The letters are in there to show you the 3 different types of restrictions that may have been put on to some people, not everybody. You know, when everyone got that letter, it's like they told everyone, "Hey, these are the restrictions that you could have." People got that letter and thought it was saying that you do have these restrictions. So anyway, what I'm going to do, just for interest of time, I'm going to come back to this. I probably should have saved this for last, Melissa. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, come back to this if you're ready to go and, you know, kind of take there. I think we have another poll and we have something about prior approval. Did you all know this? Which of the following requires prior approval? And I think we have pretty good answers there. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And Melissa, you go ahead, take it away. I'll stop sharing my screen. Let me see, stop share. But I just got to, I figured it out, right? Now I got to stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much, Lisa, for all of that information. Very, you know, me coming an outsider looking in, it's been very helpful working with Lisa in this process. And so what I wanted to start off with was kind of show you, Lisa provided me a sample for each of the programs that are you know, under Trio. So basically all of you should be somewhat familiar with this, but all of them are pretty much in the same format. So starting with EOC, you know, always have salaries or personnel. It always starts there. Then we focus on fringe and the breakdown for each on all of, you know, the detail. Scrolling down through travel, your supplies, basically everything we just went through that Lisa just described. And then, of course, the important information where we're breaking down. So we have the direct costs, which is all of your categories, obviously added together. And then your modified direct costs, which we just, which Lisa just explained or in depth, which obviously you're subtract or you're taking away the support costs and any rentals. Right. And that's it, right? Just the rental, Lisa. And I know we just went over that. Then, of course, indirect cost, which is usually the 8% of your modified indirect costs or your modified total direct costs.
And Melissa, could you do me a favor? Could you make that a little bit bigger?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry.
And while that's fine. And while you're doing that, this budget that she's showing you right now, we have in the Google Drive. Okay.
Yes.
There's a folder that says sample budgets in case you want to follow along. We put it in the order. And we do have a question about indirect that I wanted to stress just real quick. You know, Melissa, indirect funds, that 8%, that is what the institution or agency gets to pull from the grant of monies that have been spent as they're being spent, not at the very top of the year, like, oh, I'm going to take 8% of that 200,000 and do something with it. The institution or agency can do whatever they want with those funds. So someone just asked, why is it restricted? Well, that's restricted because your agency or your college says, we need that money to pay for payroll, bookkeeping, all those things that are not coming out of your budget directly, all the personnel. In fact, this program is probably costing us 25%, and we're lucky to get the 8%. So that's why you possibly are not seeing that at all. Someone says, can I request those funds? You can ask, but your institution is probably going to say, no, sir, no, ma'am, we need that and then some. But some people are able to get that indirect back, but that's something you handle directly with your institution, and you can create a different account for it, and then it doesn't have some of the restrictions that the OMB or TRIO regulations have. Their other question was, is there a software that can help us track the budget, or do I need to build a spreadsheet, which ties into what you're about to show us. So I just wanted to bring that up. I'll shut up now.
No, please keep talking. So again, as they're all in the drive, but I just wanted to start off here letting, kind of familiarizing everybody with, okay, this is what I'm used to. And so with what we have built, we are taking this information and then moving it into your customized spreadsheet. So as we mentioned, or your customized budget, every
Can you make it bigger,
budget.
Melissa? Sorry to interrupt. Just can you make it bigger?
Yeah.
That's okay. Every time, yeah, when you switch over, you have
every
to make
single
it
one.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No,
you.
you're fine. I'm sorry. Okay, so in every budget that we build, we will include this reference guide. It has the hyperlinks, so when you click on it, it will automatically take you to that link directly to that specific item that you're looking for. So if there's, again, this is customizable. So if there's more information that we need to add that you would like to, ideally what we're trying to do is keep it where everything that you need to manage your budget throughout the year, including your questions as the year continues to go on, you have all your resources in one place. So this is something that as the year goes on, hey, can you add this to our spreadsheet? We sure can. However it fits for you, format that you need it to be. So this is definitely something that we want to start with this. Everybody will receive this. That way, as you're building or as you're creating your budget to submit, then you at least have your questions or answered, or you can find your answers through these resources.
And they have this, y'all have this resource as is in the Google Drive. So you already have this part. It's if you want to include it as on your, and I don't know how she did that, but she included it on her budget in Excel, but you guys have the separate thing.
Yes.
Yeah, the document in the Google Drive.
This one will have the hyperlinks. I think the one in the drive, does it also have the hyperlinks as well?
Yes, it's hyperlinked, just like this.
Okay, perfect.
No problem.
For this one, the next tab, I'm literally taking the budget that you provide me, because basically the service is somewhat after the fact, after you've already been approved, or at least you already have your number or your approved total for the year. Because I do know that we are working with a couple that have not yet submitted yet, but they've already been approved. So we're trying to, I'm not sure how that's working, but that's something where, we're taking your budget, and I'm just literally plugging in your numbers. So that's the simple part of this. I'm taking everything that you've submitted. So we're just kind of customizing it to you again. So again, as I was just showing you this, we're using the SSS program as the sample for the demo. And so right here, I put a note saying that this is where you'll see your actual program information. So if you were an EOC or Upward Bound Talent Search or McNair, this is where you will see that. But then again, scrolling down, it's the same information, the same number. So basically, it's just here again, all in all in one place for you. Coming down all the way to the bottom where you have your breakdown of your direct, your modified, and then your indirect. After that, we include the training stipends slash or and participant support costs, and then your total, your grand total at the end, and then your cost per participant.
Melissa,
So
sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting questions about where is this in the Google Drive? Well, guess what? It's not in the Google Drive. You've everything else you get, even that first page where it says the quick reference, you have that. What Melissa's showing you is what she took an Excel spreadsheet and she added, like she said, added those tabs. And yes, the formulas are in there just like they are in the sample budgets. So in the sample budgets that you have for each program in the Google Drive,
formulas.
you have the formulas in there. She's taking it to the next step and building off of that spreadsheet, adding on additional tabs. You don't have this because this is a service that we want to provide, but our deal was that you could build it. It's nothing proprietary, right? Nothing secret, nothing, although you're
That's why
brilliant.
we're using
fabulous,
Excel.
Melissa.
Yeah.
And so we're using Excel. We didn't want you
Yeah.
to have to buy QuickBooks because you don't need to have QuickBooks because we're not bringing money. We're not selling anything. I need QuickBooks because I sell stuff, right? But as a Trio program, I'm paying out things. So I just want to let you know that this is not in the Google Drive, but we're showing you and you're getting the video. So if you want to mimic and copy it, go right ahead. But if you want someone to do it for you and you got carryover, we're here. So just wanted to.
Yeah. And this was the big thing was, just in the clients that we have met already, just understanding the complications. And because a lot of a few that I've met are wearing multiple hats, and this is kind of goes back to that whole personnel and, the extra funds and why haven't you used this? Why are you not spending it type questions that you get. Our hope is that this is going to eliminate that. But obviously it takes a second to get started, but we will be there for you. That's what also comes with part of the service is our support. So technical support as well as guidance, walking you through, assisting you throughout, this is part of our service. So taking your spreadsheet, I'm a lot of the when Lisa brought this to me, a lot of the issue was how do we know what we have at the end of the month? Because I can just I know that your institution comes to you saying this is what you spent. Now tell me, now take it from there. So this can be used multiple ways. So from the most basic way, I've built a spreadsheet that takes basically every single or every category that you have here, starting with personnel, each line item or each role, along with all of the details, I have built it into a month by month spreadsheet. So what we call your trackers. So this is basically where you want to come in here and you can literally, from the most basic, plug in your numbers where you just type in your details. So if this is how much wages were, this is how much this role was, that's where you just plug in those numbers. Now I took it to a next level in the sense of more of a visual trigger for you. This is something where I've created formulas and formats in here that you don't have to touch. I have taken care of that for you. I love colors. I need something to draw my attention somewhere. So what we are doing is taking whatever color you choose, so it's customizable. I have used Lisa's coloring scheme. And then I
Welcome horns.
also, yeah. So I also use part of that in the Kohl's color scheme is conditional format that tells me if I have a cell right here, or if I have I've clicked on a cell, if it is this certain color, that is a visual cue for me that I need to actually input data into the cell. Otherwise, that means that I've missed something. So, every month, that's kind of your visual check to say, do I have everything recorded? That way I can say at the end of the month, I actually have this much left over. And so taking what you are approved, right? So going back to your budget over here, your overall budget for your personnel salaries is a total of 197,280. So this technically becomes what I have detailed as your beginning balance, because that's the amount of funds that you are allowed for the full year, $197,280 for the full year. So we're taking that, using that as your beginning balance, and then we create this month over month um, tracker. That way, every time you input something, the formulas are built in, and then it automatically calculates all of your totals. So right here, I have demonstrated what it would look like for you if you had a full year of, I don't know if this can be seen now that I'm thinking about it. um, if you had a full year of data, um, this is what it would look like. So I have created to where you have a column for each month, and then each month will total, it will take the prior months. So basically it's the accounting tracking, or balancing your own checkbook. That's the easiest way that I like to think of it. So basically you're taking your beginning balance of your account, taking all that was spent during that month, and then that's typically your ending balance. I wanted to show this to you because I have it calculated where at the end of the month, based on what you were approved. So all these numbers right here in this column match your budget that you actually you submitted to the Department of Education. So I take that, and then we have the end of the end of the year total. Anything that was unused, it will actually formulate in here, and it will actually tell you this is actually how much money we have left over for this specific category at this time period. So taking this into consideration that I've used a whole year, if this role left at the end of, at the end of April, so there was no more payroll to have to issue, then obviously there's zero. So we anticipated it to be $32,000 for the year, but we actually only spent 20,800. And that was part of where what Lisa addressed earlier was, I haven't spent that money, but how come you haven't, where is all this money been going? That question of everybody is taking over everybody's role because we don't have the roles filled. So getting to this point, this kind of gives you that opportunity to see, I have 11,200 remaining. So technically that remaining balance is hopefully to be approved as your carryover. So in this demonstration, obviously you're going to see the carryover to be extremely high because I don't have a full year of data, but it's going to show you that as the year continues to go, your carryover is going to decrease as you're using up your funds. So with this visual cue, I wanted to point out, this tells you that you need to input data. So if you did not actually have any funds to pay out, or not any funds, but um, any, or this role was not paid at that time, enter a zero, and then the data is entered. So it visually changes for you. So that actually gives you the opportunity to say, okay, I have not missed anything. So zero would be technically considered your data. And then if you have the next one, then you just continue to enter on. And as you can see, my formula keeps on changing as I keep on adding in information. So I have this built for all of the categories that are in your budget. And then at the end of the year, you should be able to see, okay, this is how much I have. So I'm going to do a real quick, because I know our time is I'm going to just copy and paste this. That way you can see right now I'm showing, because it's October. So right now I'm showing that we have 51,033 in carryover. So if we actually paid out this, which I know it's not standard, but I'm just going to use it as an example. that we're going to pay it out for the rest of the year. Oh, here we go. Hopefully this way works. All my formulas have changed. And then it shows me at the end of the year, I actually have $11,200 left over. So going back to the example that I had, the unused budgetary allocation is because we actually spent the exact dollar amount that was approved by, or that was originally submitted. So obviously they're going to be off by pennies or dollars or hundreds or thousands. Just kind of depends on how your budget flows throughout the year, or how your transactions flow throughout the year. This was just the easiest one to demonstrate because it's the most standard on a monthly basis. So moving down, let me just skip out of that. As you can see, I have no visual cue up in my personnel category section. So at the end, I show ending personnel. And then at the end of the year, this is the actual balance that I should technically have left over, and which should technically be considered a carryover if allowed. But then I also do know that most of the time, this is the category that when you do the transfers between accounts, this is usually the category that it's moved from, because this happens to be the category that usually has the most budgeted. So going further down, you'll see that I have, again, and it matches, I have the numbers in here that match your budget. All of the details going to be the same. Your beginning balance is what was approved, and then each dollar value per category, or per line item, I should say. Again, I have it just for September and October. Then you see the visual cue. So when November comes, then you just start, okay. Now I know that most institutions have it where you're paid on a bi or semi-monthly. So you get paid twice a month, usually the 15th or the last day, or the 1st and the 15th, one of those type breakdowns. So this is where you can easily just type in just a simple arithmetic formula, which I can guide you. If you have no experience in Excel, I will help you through that. But for most of us who do have the most basic experience, you could just type in a very simple arithmetic equals this number plus that number. And as long as you have an equals in it, the equal, Excel reads it as a formula. So you should just type in, let's just say $200 for the first period, or for the first payroll. Now, when you come in to do the second payroll, then you could come in here and just type in plus, and then your second payroll. Now, we can always break that down even further for you, which I will get into detail here in a bit. But this is something where this is pretty standard every month. And if you actually touch this budget on a semi-monthly basis, or I built it based on you're only touching it on a month basis because you're just plugging in your numbers. But the goal is to eventually have you working in this on a weekly basis. That way you get, every time you have an expense or a purchase coming out for supplies, or you're booking a trip or something, then you have the ability um to actually track each transaction separately. And then, like I said, I'm going to go into that in just a second. But I did want to show you, we have each category, we have the visual cue, and again, at the end of the year, each category will calculate just as I demonstrated with the payroll or the personnel wages. So moving down to travel, everything, again, it's supposed to look exactly like your budget that we submit. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down to the supplies, because this is one that Lisa and I have spoken about often, and with several of our clients who we've worked with, where this becomes more particular. How do I do this? How does this work here? So what I did was I actually created a separate tab that we can have that you can add to this. Well, this will, it will come with the demonstrate or with the service where you can actually create. I have a separate tab that you can actually log each item separately. And I do know that a lot of it requires more information for your institution. So I'm most familiar with the PO, and Lisa, you said this was the purchase request. Oh, let me increase this.
Purchase requisition. And I think we
Correct.
actually have Heidi. Heidi, I think, is on there. Heidi, if you want to pop up on the chat and let us know, because we assumed that was the purchase requisition number.
Yes, and thank you, Heidi, for letting me. She says, "What's
Hey,
up?"
she goes, "What's up?" Yeah, would that be that would be the purchase requisition, right? If you want to go to that amount of detail.
Yes, yeah, and
PO is the purchase requisition. What's the PR? She'll answer in just a second, but you can go on.
okay.
Sorry,
So
PR is,
basically-
yeah, she got it, yeah, PR is the purchase requisition, yeah.
Okay. So this one is, we can go into further detail where you actually have, you have your date, because basically you get a receipt. What do I do with this? Plug it in here. The way I've built this is where it will, and obviously you can have this much longer, where I'm just, for the purpose of demonstration, it's not very many line items, but this can go on thousands of line items depending on how much you need to buy. So here I have it to where it looks very similar. You have each month as a column. And then I have calculated, I have created the formulas to where it will pull in your monthly spend for this category into your budget tracker. So as you can see here, I'm down here on the supply section, and I just add a note, see supplies tab for the individual transactions. And then I have created this to where it will bring in the actual transactions from that spreadsheet. So just to give you an example what it looks like, because this will be one that you don't need to actually work in this one. So you will never see that visual cue in this when you have a separate tab for it. So when I come over here to supplies, let's just type in, well, I guess today's 14th. So just type in more, and then let's just add another item. So we know it's 238.15. Let's just make sure 238.15. So go back to my tab supplies, my tab 4 supplies, and let's just add a big number so we could see the change, or a bigger number. So as you can see, it automatically pulls in over here, which at the bottom will also calculate everything else. So with regards to this, I've asked if this specific tab can be created for whichever one for your custom, whatever makes most sense for you. I've listed the top 4 here. Training stipends being participant support costs. Travel was another one that was asked. We can even do one for salaries and wages if you wish. That one I would actually do different, because we would want more payroll information in there. So if you wanted to individual, so and so, have everybody listed out separately, we can definitely do that. That's just going to be a little bit more work on that end. So it won't look exactly like this, but again, work in progress. So like I said, we can actually do an individual tab for whichever categories you want. The idea was to not have you working in so many tabs, because we want you to be able to just ideally just get used to, okay, what is my ending balance for this account at this day or of this month? So that is actually why I add that tab, because I do know that for those specific categories, it does make more sense versus having to scroll down for so many lines on this tab on your monthly tracker, because we just want to have, one number for in total for that category for that month. And the same thing for this line item. So things like that. So obviously this is Excel, and there are so many things that we can do with it. So you tell me what you would like and I will make it work. to the best of my ability. So coming down all the way to the bottom, we have our other category. I will come back to the carryover here just after I finish this. But I have this as I have this all here, just like it looks on your budget that you submit to to the Department of Education. Total direct costs. If you actually have modified or items that need to be subtracted from your modified cost, these balances include your spend. So this is basically after all that was spent in this month of September. This was a total awarded amount. This was the total, each month or each category has what was spent. And of course, sample. So I didn't like for travel, I kind of assumed September didn't have any travel, being that it was the start of the year. I don't know. I could be 100% wrong. I'm an outsider looking in. So I just kind of took this and then said, okay, so taking your beginning balance less your total spend for the month, this is actually what you have in your total direct costs. If you had rent to subtract from here, then this would actually be a different value. I added this indirect cost so you actually can see the total 8% off of this. I'm still kind of tweaking this one, but I think this is going to be where when I speak with more people, I'm going to get a better idea because I'm seeing this and because it's the whole balance, we're seeing it's going to decrease, obviously. So ideally at the end, it's going to be highest at the beginning and then lowest at the end because most of the balance, most of this category has already been removed, right? Or used rather, better word terminology. Continuing forward, we have our participant support costs, training stipends. So using that same sample. And then at the very, very bottom, I bring in your grand total, which again, down here at the very, very bottom, in theory, this total would equal, but because I have numbers already plugged in, I mean, the total, obviously it should be this minus whatever was unused. So minus your carryover, ideally. So I have your total at the year end. So because this is per month. So every time you see, it extend past that, that's because it's per month. This one is at the year end. So right now I'm showing that the grand total and the year end grand total, meaning the year end balance. So this was your beginning balance, and then this is your year end balance. So technically, if you have approved, I think Lisa, you had told me that you think the max or the max that's usually approved for carryover is about what?
Well, it varies. And someone had asked that question. So in the past, when I was a director, 25, 30,000, now we're getting some big amounts. So if you can justify it, and people have been telling me, I've been shocked when people have been telling me they got so much approved. And some people, they don't get it approved. They keep it. So it varies, Melissa. We want to avoid even having to have that conversation, but in a perfect budgeting, you get it down to $1, right? So anyway, again, in the past it was 25, 30K, and now it varies. But you want to keep it low because you're gonna have to explain why you have so much.
Yeah.
I don't like to explain.
So backtracking now, this column that I have here, if you're past year one and you have approved carryover, your balances that are approved for the specific categories that are presented to us in your original budget that you were submitted, that will also be included here. My formulas in this include the totals for here. So as you can see, looking at this, I'm using a original request for 2,500, then a carryover approved of 2,500. Nothing has been used for the year yet, so my unused is the total of the two. So as that's used throughout the year, then obviously your unused will decrease. So the goal again is to make sure that we get to that point where, especially with your personnel, if you have to replace or if you have to fill a role, you have the ability to see or forecast rather where you're going to be at the start of the year, or how you can, because we can actually start this preparing your budget so much sooner, and then rather than the week of, or months after. Definitely don't want, especially everything that's happening right now, we definitely don't want to raise any flags as to what's happening. So from this point, we take it to, I've simplified it to where you're going to be able to see everything in a whole view, so you don't have to keep on scrolling. This is going to be a view only page. So it's going to be password protected. Obviously, you will receive the password, but we want to keep that password protected. That way, it forces you to not change any data in here, because everything that's in here is a formula that is pulled in from other spreadsheets or from the other tabs that I have demonstrated here. And then it gives you an idea of where you're at. And so as of today, uh, granted, this is going as of the total at the end. So in my budget with the personnel, I filled in, if you recall, I filled in the entire year to kind of give you an idea of what it would look at the end of the year. And so even though we're in October, if I was to remove all of October, this would actually be accurate for the month. So for the purposes of being able to show this to you, this is where we're at with that. So again, I can customize all of this to how you need it to look. I do know that this has been the most common format that with the clients that we have that are able to see it this way. Oh, do I need to increase this again? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Um, so, we want to make sure that it's, rather than scrolling, then you just have a clear view of it. So this is how much I've used. This is how much I have left over at this time period. So yeah, I think that's about it, Lisa. I hope
Let's see.
that
And perfect,
helps.
time's up, but we will stick around for a while if you can. Some of y'all have a hard stop, so you've got to leave us. This recording will be ready. I am answering the Q&A, and we will have that published. And I'll stay on to finish answering Q&A questions. Let's see. Do we have any, Donna, that are specific to? Just want to stress that spreadsheet that Melissa was showing, that specific one, you won't have in the Google Drive. But we wanted to come across or get across to you that's something that you can build. And, if you are an advanced user, you can take it to the next level, definitely. But I'm not, so I got to start basic. And depending on how much access I have to either do my own entries or not, we can definitely talk to you on an individual basis for that. But our whole purpose was to let you know you don't have to buy QuickBooks, because that's what I thought. And I was trying to get my clients to spend some of that carryover. But then you said, actually, that's going to be more complicated in their situation. They can build it all in Excel. And I'll let Melissa wrap it up and just, bring it on home, girl.
Yeah. Yeah, that I didn't think that was an extra cost that needed to be had for your programs, because one, you don't have access to the cash. So this is something that if you're given the information, then you just plug it in, but you have control. You have full control of this. You can see everything. And I think it's, obviously built to your, to tailor to what your needs are. And, we're here in every support that you need. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been a wonderful experience learning everything about Trio. And so now I'm fight with you guys. Um, and hope that, we can streamline this for everyone. So thank you.